By now, it was time to start making my way back across the city for my appointment. The war had been over almost 9 months when I finally plucked up the courage to write to Marion Bancroft. A part of me wanted to dismiss her from my thoughts entirely, to pretend that she and her family did not exist. What possible comfort could I offer after all? But one day, tortured by guilt, I composed a letter. Dear Miss Bancroft, you don't know me, but I was a friend of your brother, Will. We were in the same regiment. I must apologize for writing to you out of the blue like this, but I have something belonging to Will that I thought I should return. The letters you wrote him while he was over there. He kept them all, you see, and they fell to me. Afterwards, I mean, on account of our friendship. If you would perhaps permit me to call on you some day, then I could return them. Your brother was my best friend, and I know that he was no coward, Miss Bancroft. He was a braver man than I will ever be. With respectful wishes, Tristan Sadler. It was almost 2 weeks before I received a reply. Dear Mr. Sadler, thank you for writing to me. I apologize for taking so long to reply, but your letter both upset and moved me in unexpected ways. You speak very kindly of Will, and I was tremendously affected by this. But I'm afraid I have a very contradictory feeling towards our soldiers. I respect them, of course, but when I think of what they did to my brother... The letters. I can't believe you have them. It is very kind that you want to return them to me, and your offer to come here is a generous one. And so it was that later that month, just before 1 o'clock, I found myself sitting in the window of a cafe just off Cattle Market Street, waiting for Marion Bancroft. The door opened, and I looked up, amazed by the sudden fright it gave me. My stomach was rolling with anxiety, and I suddenly dreaded this encounter. But it was a young man who had come inside, and he stared at me in an almost feral fashion before moving from my sight line. I picked up a container of napkins from the table for something to do, and my right hand immediately broke into a fresh spasm, and the napkins fell to the floor. I reached down to pick them up, which is how I failed to notice when the door opened again, and a young lady entered and made her way towards me. Mr. Sadler, she said, and I looked up, staring at her. Words failing me now. Words failing me. Aldershot, April to June 1916. I notice Will Bancroft on our first day at Aldershot Military Barracks. We arrive in the afternoon, some 40 of us, a group of untidy boys stinking of sweat and bogus heroism. Just look at them, says the boy next to me. Bloody fools, all of them. I turn to look at him. He's tall, with a studious appearance. Tristan Sadler, I say, extending a hand. He shakes it and nods. Arthur Wolfe. I bet you volunteered, didn't you? Just turned 18, are you? Yes, I lie. In fact, my 18th birthday is 5 months away, but I have no intention of admitting it here. A moment later, I sense a commotion in the ranks, and I watch as 3 men in uniform stride towards us. Good afternoon, gentlemen, says the man in the centre. Follow me, won't you? We gather into a pack and shuffle along behind him. Looks like he's the one in charge, Wolfe says, nodding towards the sergeant. We stop now in the centre of the parade ground, and the sergeant and his 2 corporals turn to face us. Let me begin by welcoming you to Aldershot. My name is Sergeant James Clayton, and over the next couple of months it is my responsibility to train you into soldiers. You, sir, he says, pointing at a lad in the front row. Your name, please. Mickey Rich, says the boy confidently. Mickey Rich, sir, shouts the soldier, standing at the sergeant's left shoulder. It's all right, Corporal Wells, the sergeant says cheerfully. Rich doesn't understand our ways yet. He's ignorant, aren't you, Rich? Yes, sir. The sergeant nods at a second man. Who are you? Shield, sir. You? Philip Unsworth, sir.
You!
Will Bancroft, sir. And so on, a litany of names.
And you?
The sergeant asks, nodding in my direction now. Tristan Sadler, sir, I say. Arthur Wolfe, says my neighbour.
Wolfe,
says Sergeant Clayton, his mouth creasing into a thin smile.
So you're the chap who doesn't want to be here, yes?
That's right, sir.
Afraid to fight, are you?
No, sir.
No, sir, indeed not, sir. What an outrageous charge, sir.
I expect to hear from the tribunal quite soon, sir.
Actually, it is I who shall hear, Wolfe,
snaps the sergeant. He addresses the pack now.
I'm sure you're all proud to be here, men. But you're probably aware that there are some men who feel no obligation to defend their country. Objectors, they call themselves. Chaps who examine their conscience and find nothing there to satisfy the call of duty. They look like other men, of course. They have 2 eyes and 2 ears, 2 arms and 2 legs. No balls, though. That's a given. And they would bring us down if they could.
Bloody coward, says a voice from behind me. Featherman, says another. I watch to see how Wolfe will react to the taunts, and it's then that I lay eyes on Will Bancroft. He's standing 4 men down from me and staring at Wolfe. He isn't joining in the chorus of disapproval. It's as if he wants to get the mark of someone who calls himself a conscientious objector. I find myself staring at Bancroft, unable to shift my gaze. It's a strange moment. I feel as if I already know him.
Come up here, Wolfe,
says Sergeant Clayton.
And you, Mr. Rich.
The 2 men step forward.
Gentlemen,
says Sergeant Clayton, looking towards the assembled men.
In this army you will be trained to fight, to handle a rifle and to kill the enemy. But sometimes you may find you have no weapons left. You have nothing but your fists. What do you think you would do, Shields?
He says, addressing one of the recruits. Fight it out, sir.
Exactly,
says the sergeant.
Fight it out. Now, you 2.
And he nods in the direction of Wolfe and Rich.
Fight it out!
Both Rich and Wolfe turn to each other, the latter with an expression of disbelief on his face. But Rich doesn't hesitate and punches Wolfe directly on the nose. "Ah! You've broken my bloody nose!" cries Wolfe, blood pouring from his nostrils.
So break his in return,
says Sergeant Clayton casually. Wolfe waits a few seconds, breathing heavily, controlling his temper, before shaking his head. "I won't fight, sir."
Hit him again, Rich.
And now Wolfe is punched again, in the stomach, and then once more in the ribs, and he's on the floor. The men watch, uncertain how they should feel about the whole thing. Even Rich steps back.
For pity's sake,
says Sergeant Clayton, shaking his head contemptuously.
All right, Rich, get back into line. And you, Wolfe, get up, for God's sake. He barely touched you.
Wolfe rises to his feet and shuffles back into line next to me. He catches my eye. Perhaps he sees the expression of concern there, but he looks away. He wants no pity. My first contact with Will Bancroft comes the following morning. We're divided into barracks of 20 men. I have the last but one bunk on one side. Will is next to me against the wall. I've never shared a room with anyone, let alone 19 other young men, and I'm convinced it will be impossible to sleep. But to my surprise, my head has barely hit the pillow, and then it's morning, and our two corporals, Wells and Moody, are screaming at us to make our way quick-smart to the medical tent for an inspection. Drifting outside, Will and I fall into line with each other, and he extends a hand to me. "Will Bancroft," he says. "Tristan Sadler. Looks like we're to be neighbours. You don't snore, do you?" "I don't know," I reply. "You?" "I'm told when I lay on my back I could raise the roof." "How many brothers do you have then?" I ask, assuming they had told him of his nocturnal habits. "None. Just a sister. You? I hesitate, feel a lump in my throat, unsure whether to answer truthfully or not. My sister Laura, I say, and leave it at that. I was always glad of my sister, Will says, smiling. She's a few years older, but we look out for each other. She's made me promise to write to her regularly while I'm over here. I nod, examining him closer now. He's a good-looking fellow with a mess of dark, untidy hair and bright blue eyes. What did you make of our friend Wolf, then? He says as we stride on. Pretty brave of him, wouldn't you say? Pretty stupid. Still, you have to admire him. Have you ever known a conscientious objector? No. Have you? One. The older brother of a school friend. Refused to take up arms on religious grounds. They sent him off to the front as a stretcher-bearer. That seems fair, I say. Only until you realise that a stretcher-bearer has a life expectancy of about 10 minutes. Snipers pick them off easily. Doesn't seem quite so fair now, does it? I frown and consider it. I want to reply carefully, for I already know that it's important to me that Will Bancroft thinks well of me and adopts me as his friend. I could have tried the religious thing myself, he adds. The part as a vicar, you see, up in Norwich. He wanted me to go into the church too. And you didn't fancy it? No, I don't mind soldiering. At least I don't think I'll mind it. Oh, watch out, here we are. We step inside the medical hut, where Moody splits us into groups. Will and I are among the first to be examined. The doctor indicates that Will should strip out of his clothes, and he does so without embarrassment. Without thinking how it might look, I take him all in at a glance and am struck once again by how good-looking he is. Out of nowhere, I have a sudden flashback to that afternoon at my former school. The day of my expulsion, a memory still buried deep inside me. After our medicals, we return to the barracks. Will and I lie on our bunks. What did you think of that doctor then? He says. I didn't think anything of him. Why? I just thought you seemed very interested in what he was doing, that's all. Not planning on joining the medical corps, are you? I feel my face begin to blush. He had caught me staring at him. No, Bancroft. I'm sticking with the regiment. Glad to hear it, Tristan, he says. It's good to have made a friend. And for God's sake, stop calling me Bancroft. My name's Will. I know every bugger here calls each other by their surnames, but we're different, I think. Let's not